I would call personal trips or business trips to DC with Mr. Wade?
I never went to DC with Mr. Wade, personal, business, otherwise, never.
Okay, so
I've never been in the District of Columbia with Mr. Wade or Maryland, Virginia, the DMV as they call it.
as I understand it, just to be clear, any trips that you would have taken to see DC
That
would not,
was a pretty clear answer.
huh?
That was a pretty clear answer. She just said no.
Twice.
So do you have a variation or something new to bring up?
I'll ask it and we'll see. Did you take trips to DC that were non-business during the time period that this case or this matter was under investigation?
I'm going to object as to relevance as it relates to the matter that we're here before Your Honor.
Well, again, the question already asked is take personal or business trips. She said
But that was with
personal
Mr.
or
Wade.
business.
That was with Mr. Wade. This I asked her alone whether she took.
Okay.
What's the relevance?
And what would be the relevance of that?
I'm trying to understand whether or not we have an ability to show a personal trip in which Mr. Wade is there at the same time. I understand her answer. Okay, I understand her answer, but we have documents, we have records that.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the documents, the things.
Well, this could be something that's maybe not part of the record yet, but if he has I think there have been other things discussed in this case, and they have evidence that Mr. Wade may have been in DC at the same time. If you want to ask about that exact specific date, Mr. Sadon, you can do that.
I would reference to the court that was not asked of Mr. Wade. Anything about any trip.
Me too, Daryl. Me
Sure.
too.
And so that's going to limit its merit and impact and on credibility. So Mr. Sadon, ask the question.
So
Whether, I understand your testimony is you never took a trip to DC with Mr. Wade,
that's correct.
personal or business.
That's correct.
Were you ever in DC at the same time as Mr. Wade?
I was not.
on personal or business?
No, me and Mr. Wade have not been to DC at the same time. However, since Mr. Wade has been on this case, he's been to DC. Since Mr. Wade has been on to this case, I've been to DC. What has not happened is we have not been in the District of Columbia at the same time. Now, the only thing I'm not sure about with what you asked me is if I've been to DC personally, because I got a lot of personal friends in that area, but I know that I have been to DC. I did an interview at Howard University. I went to DC for that. Seems like I've been to DC one other time. Oh, I went to DC for the Global Summit. Actually, yeah, those were two separate trips.
My next question is based on her opening the door, and therefore I'll just ask it and Your Honor can decide whether or not it's appropriate. When you went to DC, did you go to the White House?
I did not go to the White House.
No, well,
Apparently I'm going to get the answer anyhow.
there you have it. Next question.
Okay. You indicated your best recollection was that your relationship with Mr. Wade, the romantic relationship, ended, you left it in August of 2023. That sound right?
That's the hard conversation. That's not the,
We've covered this. Next question.
And you characterized it as a tough conversation, correct?
yes,
I'm not going to get into the conversation per
we
se.
should.
Well, if he doesn't want to, we won't go there. So Mr. Sadon, next question.
You know, it's kind of hard to say no when you've got that opportunity. But all I'm going to say is was it pre-indictment in this case?
So,
We know the timeline that the indictment was delivered. Well,
but,
actually,
and so that
I'll
we're
give you
clear,
that.
the
Okay.
physical relationship ended pre-indictment.
And is that when you were talking about the tough conversation?
But I'm not sure that the tough conversation didn't happen till after, but the physical relationship. So I'm sure if you ask Mr. Wade, because he's a male, he would say we ended June or July because physical contact ended then. Just in my mind, being a woman, it's over when you have that like hard conversation. I just think women and men think differently.
And I think the answer, Mr. Sadon, to your question was she's not sure whether.
But didn't she just say that they were in a relationship when they tried to clean this thing up?
That is what I said. That's what I said.
I'll let you. Next question, Mr. Sadon. If you need to
Want to say
clarify.
one more? The romantic relationship ended before the indictment was returned, yes or no?
To a man, yes.
Well, to a man, yes. To you, no?
She's explained this, Mr. Sadon. She's explained this.
And did the forthcoming indictment have anything to do with that? Or was it just a coincidence?
Let's go on and have the conversation.
I'm just asking you whether or not it was a coincidence.
Had absolutely nothing to do with this. It's interesting that we're here about this money. Mr. Wade is used to women that, as he told me one time, the only thing a woman can do for him is make him a sandwich. We would have brutal arguments about the fact that I am your equal. I don't need anything from a man. A man is not a plan. A man is a companion. And so there was tension always in our relationship, which is why I would give him his money back. I don't need anybody to foot my bills. The only man who's ever foot my bills completely is my daddy.
Is there anything else you would like to add to that?
No,
Sure.
but I'm sure we'll talk about it further.
No, we're not going to talk about it further.
All right, no back and forth, Mr. Sadow. Next question.
My next question is something that that has to do with what I've characterized as the church speech. Let me just tell you what the question is, because I know that's not something.
Preserved for the
I'm
record.
a strong, independent Black woman, and I don't need no man.
Move on.
That's correct. Thank you. When you gave what I've referred to as the Martin Luther King weekend church speech, you know what I'm referring to.
A great honor of mine. That's a historic African-American church. Yes, I do.
Okay. Did you have handwritten notes with you that you were reading from during the speech?
And on second thought, Mr. Sadow, because you might have a number of questions about this, why don't we just bullet point what you would want to cover on this, preserved for the record, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Okay.
Since I had laid out before that the forensic misconduct isn't a
So
subject
do
of the
I
evidentiary
not
hearing.
get an answer for that?
That's right.
Okay. Did you read your speech?
Well, no, Mr. Sadow, for everything related to any forensic.
Oh, you just want me to
misconduct
stay out
claims,
of it now?
We're just not, we can do it in a bullet form if you just want to cover what you would have asked, but it's not in a question and answer format.
Okay, so I should do that at this point or do it
Sure,
when you're ready?
we can do it right now, so it's fresh on
I'm
your
going to ask her about, did she prepare the speech? Did she have notes on the speech? Did she read the speech? When did she do this? When did she write the speech? Who was she referring to when she was talking about others? Who was she referring to when she said they? Who she was referring to when she spoke in terms of their, that is.
I would love to answer those questions.
Well, Ms. Willis, you could certainly do that in some other format, but for today, that's what we decided we're not going to cover.
Who was she talking about that was playing the race card, and why she didn't tell the people at the church that she had had a personal / romantic relationship with the, all due respect, the way it was characterized, the Black man that she was referring to, and was the Black man she referring to, was that Mr. Wade?
Okay.
That's that area of inquiry.
Noted for the record, Mr. Sadow. Next topic.
Okay. I realize that you've testified that you have no records that with regard to cash payments,
Yes.
correct?
Mhm.
Would your bank records reflect that you withdrew cash from your bank accounts during the time period of 2020, 2021, 2022, or 2023? I'm not asking you, I'm just asking whether they would reflect that you withdrew cash from any of your bank accounts.
So the exact amounts.
No, just
But yeah,
that you did.
of course, I withdrew money throughout that time period, throughout my life. I withdrawn money from the bank. Yes, of course.
Talking about cash from, that is that you go to a
Cash,
bank
right.
or you go to an ATM
Cash.
and you take cash out.
Either that way, or you go to Publix and you overpay, or you go to another store and you overpay. So yes, both through that. Yes, of course they would reflect that at times.
Okay, and so those records, if we had them, would show that, correct?
That throughout the course of my life, I
No,
took out
no,
money.
I was very specific. I said,
Yes, during the course
2020.
of that time period, I would have taken money out. Yes,
So do you have a problem with,
I absolutely. Yes,
you don't want the bank records to be made available for the court and the court
Your Honor, I'm
alone?
going to object this to the relevance, and this has already been addressed earlier as it relates to other records. This is an improper line of questioning. He's doing it for the purpose of harassment. Right, Your Honor.
I'm just going to sustain it on relevance. Mr. Sadow, if that's something you want to follow up privately?
Why?
Do that.
Why follow up privately?
Last,
She said it
Eric,
publicly.
briefly.
Yes, sir.
You had contact with Mr. Wade in the year 2020, correct?
Ooh, I had some contact with Mr. Wade.
Would you explain when you say some contact? Please tell us talking about 2020.
I had some contact with Mr. Wade in 2020. One of the reasons your allegations are so preposterous or mismerchants that you have joined is,
Ma'am,
No, no,
I
no,
didn't
no.
ask you about the allegations. I asked you about your contact. That's all I ask you. Okay? I appreciate that you want to say something, but I'm interested in, did you have contacts with Mr. Wade in 2020? And your answer so far has been yes, correct?
very limited contact because Mr. Wade had a form of cancer that makes your allegations somewhat ridiculous.
And I do appreciate the
I'm not going
characterization.
to emasculate a black man, but I'm just telling you.
I'm
that
sorry, what?
I'm not going to emasculate a black man. Did you understand that?
All
Well, I
right,
don't
let's
think
get
we should
back on
discuss
track.
further.
Yikes.
Mr. Sato, next question.
Trying to, Your Honor. Would you tell us on the occasions in 2020 that you had contact with Mr. Wade?
I'm sorry, I thought I had answered that. Yes, yes, sir. There were times in 2020 I had contact, but 2020 was a year I was running for office. It was a year that he was going through some serious medical issues, and I did not have much contact, but I certainly had contact with him in 2020.
Did you
It
go
wasn't-
out to eat with him?
Maybe, probably.
Did you visit him in any location, his office, or did he visit you in your office in 2020?
I am sure I'm sure, ooh, that's a very good question. I'm sure he came to 750 in 2020,
750 is,
was my office.
okay.
Not often, but maybe once or twice. Maybe I went to his office once or twice, but maybe once.
And the purpose for going to his office would have been what?
Maybe we would have went to Mellow Mushrooms for pizza, or maybe he would have come for lunch. I'm sure we went by each other's office though, but not often, not a lot. We both grinding, trying to make a
But
living.
wait, I understand what you've said about the cancer, and I'm not going into that. But when you were going out with him to restaurants, or when he would come to your office, right? Those were not sterile environments, were they?
Oh, very sterile, because it
The
was
restaurants were sterile environments?
a lot of times we wouldn't eat there. We would pick up something and go in, but they were. You're
I'm listening to you. You pick up and take it to where?
maybe eat at our office, but it did not happen much. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. And my office in 2020, nobody was coming in. I was stir crazy, so I would still go into my office. You remember when I started this, I said, I am not even sure if we came to each other's offices, but I am trying to be over cautious. So I think I can recall him at 750 a couple of times. I just think I can recall him at 750 once, but let's say twice. I have seen his office. I remember all the awards in the lobby, but I'm not sure in 2020 I went. I'm not even sure I went in 2020 at all. I just want to tell you yes, because I'm not sure. But I have a distinct recollection of him at 750. I actually don't have a distinct recollection of me at his office in 2020. But maybe I went to his office in 2020. Maybe.
Did you have ongoing phone conversations during 2020 with Mr. Wade?
Oh yeah, I talked to, yes, absolutely. Yes,
Yes, no question about that.
no question. I talked to him on the phone in 2020.
I understood, and this is, maybe I was confused. The Belize trip was for
His 50th birthday.
his 50th birthday, and that was in
March. He turned 50 March 18th of 2023. If you look at the dates of the trip, I think we were there about 6 days. We stayed at 2 different locations.
and you paid for it.
100%. He said, not only, I mean, I paid for the hotel, I paid for the flights, I had a birthday luncheon for him, I paid for massages, I paid for everything.
And would those payments be reflected on your
I
credit
paid for the
card?
cash,
You paid them in cash?
cabs, cabs. I was telling you all the different things. I paid.
And I'm asking you whether or not those payments would be reflected on credit card bills of yours.
So there was about $500 that I think is reflected on a debit card. What my recollection is, I took about $4 in cash with me to that.
400 or 4,000?
4,000. But I remember I handed him 2,500, and then the rest was just the money we spent. I probably gave $300 or $400 to this guy who was a taxi driver. He would drive us every day around the 2 or 3 days we went. Took him to eat like it was my trip money.
And you had, to be clear, to end this up, the 4,000 that you've just told
Hello,
me.
But I didn't
Robbie
give it all to him,
Privilege. I love you,
remember. I only
princess.
gave the 2,500 to him.
I didn't ask you that. I was going to ask you that 4,000 is part of my words, cash hoard that you had collected over time.
Cash what?
Hoard, H-O-R-D-E.
Oh, I thought you said something different, sir.
No, I'm afraid I wouldn't say that any circumstances to you or in
All right,
court.
back on track.
The hoard, cash hoard debt.
I would not classify it in that way, but I have money at my house. Yes, sir.
And the money, when you had money at your house,
Look, I'm speaking too loosely. I had money wherever I was staying. So I was not referring to my house in 750. I'm saying I had money wherever I was laying my head. Yes, sir. That was my fault that I wasn't clear.
so when you were at what we said, the Yerti condo, during the time period we've always discussed, that's where you would keep your cash.
When I stay there, yes.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, I want to see if we can get through a few more defense counsel if possible before breaking for today. Mr. Stockton.
So we are watching live the Fulton County DA taking the stand.
Madam District Attorney,
Absolutely
I'm Alan Stockton. I don't think we've
doing
had-
an amazing job.
It's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Hate them blue line.
Madam DA, you described these various trips, and Mr. Sadow asked you about going to Washington. Did you and Mr. Wade go to New York?
I've gone to New York. I've gone to New York twice since I've been district attorney. I'm trying to think if it's 2 or 3 times. I went to do a domestic violence thing there for sure. And I was honored and I went to the Apollo there. Those are the only 2 trips that come to mind. I went. He was not with me.
You also said that he was a world traveler and had been on many of the continents.
I've been to 6.
Have you been on any of those?
You guys don't
continents
forget to hit the like button. Thank
besides this
you.
one?
Where's Belize? What continent is it? I'm not being funny. I don't know.
Let's say, with the
I've been
exception
to
of,
Belize with him. I've been to the Bahamas with him. I've been with Aruba with him. Don't embarrass me. I'm not sure what continents those are on. Whatever continents those are, that's where I've been. I'm sure if I gave it some thought, I would tell you. But whatever continents those are, that I've been to those locations, sir.
Girl,
but not
bye.
Australia or any other continents.
I don't even want to go to Australia. I do know he took a trip in December to Australia. I have no idea, I don't know anything about that trip.
When Mr. Wade began working with your office,
Yes,
he had 2 other gentlemen that worked in his firm with him. Is that correct?
yes, Terrence Bradley worked for him and Chris Campbell worked not for him. They worked with each other.
Did you understand what their partnership arrangement was?
No,
Did he ever make you aware of how fees were divided or anything?
no,
Now, since you have been district attorney, the 2 gentlemen that worked with Mr. Wade and his firm, they also had contracts with your office. Is that correct?
I probably had I don't,
I don't know if we've covered this in Ms. Willis, but I still don't know what the relevance would be of her testifying to this.
but I've had about 10. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want me to answer
Let's
or
figure
no?
this out.
Judge, respectfully, I think based on Mr. Wade's testimony, he had an interest in those contracts.
Sure. And then, but how's that been imputed to Ms. Willis?
I don't know whether or not she knew she was giving him that benefit. That's what I was trying to explore.
Okay. Well, maybe we can start with that question, and then if she doesn't know about it, then the ins and outs of all the contracts wouldn't be quite as relevant.
What a
Just to lay a
circus.
foundation.
Give
for
them
that,
bread and circus.
Let's see where it
Respectfully, I
takes
They'll
us.
be
Go
distracted.
ahead.
The 2 gentlemen that were in Mr. Wade's office, did they have what I think's been referred to as a taint contract?
So let me be clear, and I may get the names wrong. When I first became DA, the office was not properly staffed. And so
Correct, R.
I'm
Jones.
surprised any lawyer would take it, but I did a contract for like $60 an hour to help us out with first appearance. That lasted a few months. Okay. So I can't remember if Bradley or Campbell had that. I'm sure we can have records and I can tell you which one, but I just can't remember now. I liked their experience. Bradley had been a probation officer and a defense attorney. Campbell had been a police officer and a defense attorney. There's a reason I'm telling you this. Then that contract, like I said, it didn't last long. It was just, I was aggressively hiring.
Too bad they couldn't have a change of venue.
Where I felt like I had first appearance.
It's got to be terrible
lawyers
for
for
the
that,
judge
I'll let
to
you
have
know.
to sit with obviously
Then
a
we
colleague.
had what's called a filter contract, but it was not filter for this particular case. I do have a lawyer who does the filter for this election interference case. When we're talking about filter, the contract they had that neither one of them has any longer, I now have another lawyer that does that for me. It was only for police brutality cases. It's for what I call the, so when I first got to be the DA, I had, the whole unit was called anti-corruption. It dealt with both elections and police brutality cases. I actually took a trip to Houston and visited the district attorney in Houston. They divided their work up, and I thought the way she was doing it was better than me. And so I made a civil rights unit. And so they did what we would classify as civil rights cases. Those are specifically the police brutality cases. When I first took over, I was told Paul had not filtered 5 cases. That was a joke. It ended up being the 101 cases. They weren't filtered, which is why I hired 2 of them. Eventually, we got it down enough that it was 1 of them.
Does anybody remember what the
And
answer
then
to the question she was
now I
asked
still have
is?
1 lawyer that does it, but now I've been able to cut those cases down to like 30.
Can you tell me and help me understand what the purpose of the filter is?
Yes, sir. So what a filter is police officers make statements in the line of duty, and you are not allowed as the prosecutor to know what those statements are if they're done in the furtherance of their employment. And in fact, if you know what those statements are, you're basically disqualified from the case. You can't have it anymore. So what our policy is, I think I pay them like a $50 flat fee. They pick the case up directly from the GBI because that's where those cases go to.
I didn't think so either,
And then
Robbie.
what they are to do is
This couldn't be any of us.
go
They
through
would have
the
thrown us in the
entire
sink.
file. So the body cam, which is important because sometimes they'll make a statement to their supervisor on body cam, in the police reports where they write things. If it would be easy if it was just some statement of the police officer, but what you find out is these statements are embedded in it. And so what your filter lawyer does is they go through it.
Who
They
cares?
either redact it out
Question.
electronically or they cross it out. And then once it is crossed out, then they provide it to my team, and then we're able to look at it. That was not being done appropriately when I became district attorney. I thought that it had only been, so Mr. Howard had some Chinese wall thing that I didn't think worked at all, where allegedly those cases were properly redacted. That ended up being a joke. And so the 5 cases really turned into, I'm not gonna say all 101, but a vast majority. That is the work that Mr. Bradley and Mr. Campbell did for me. They did a really good job.
Hey,
All of
Anarchy.
those cases that we originally came with, they're done. Those cases they're not just done for Mr. Bradley and Mr. Campbell, they're done through my office. But obviously life is not stagnant. There've been new police cases. I do have a lawyer that is doing that work now. That doesn't work. for me.
Eyes are
It's the
completely
same kind of
crossed.
deal.
What is she talking about?
I have another lawyer that does filtering for this case, completely separate.
So in the same private office, you had a filter contract, then you had somebody else handling first appearances and so forth, and then you had a special prosecutor. Is that correct?
I'm just not. Ultimately, the answer to your question is yes, but I'm not sure that they did it at the same time. The first appearance contract was either $60 or $90. I don't know really how I convinced them to be able to take that, but I think because it was for such a short amount of time. And then I think I pay my filter lawyers, which I still don't know how I get away with, about $150 an hour. And I want you to understand, the AG pay special prosecutors $1,000 an hour. So I'm a tough negotiator. Paul was paying people up to $375 an hour. I won't pay anyone more than $250 is my max. I have a lot of lawyers a lot for what I have that work at $250, and I cap them every month. You can't go past a certain amount of hours.
Would you agree that if Mr. Wade and the two other gentlemen that were in his firm were splitting fees in equal thirds, would you agree that he would benefit from the tank contract and also from the other first appearance contract?
I would agree he would make money. Yeah, so to make money is a benefit.
Just a thought, guy.
Mr. Durham, if you're still with us on Zoom.
No questions, Your Honor.
Mr. McDougald.
I do have a couple, Your Honor, but it's a little awkward from back here. If you want me to
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and make your way up?
Let's hope he can get some clarity. I don't know. This right here is a mess. The way they're allowing her to not just answer the question, it's dragging it all out so long. Bless her heart.
Good afternoon, Ms. Willis. How you doing?
I'm very well. How are you, Mr. McDougall? I think this is our first in-person meeting, correct?
Second.
Second, well, I apologize for not remembering you more clear.
That's quite all right. I'm referring now to exhibit number 21,
Yes, sir.
which was your financial disclosure form for 2022.
Yes, sir.
And it has a question which requires you to disclose any gifts or favors from a single prohibited source in the aggregate amount of $100 or more. Do you see that?
I don't, but I believe you.
It would be on page 2 in the middle, paragraph number 3.
Yes.
And what is your understanding of a prohibited source for purposes of this form?
I believe there's some classification of somebody you like don't have a personal relationship with that gives you $100.
All right, if you look
somebody
under there,
Sorry.
it's subparagraph 2, Romanet 2. It defines it as someone that you know or should know is seeking to do or is doing business with the county, correct?
Yes, but yes,
That includes Mr. Wade as of the date you filled out this form, correct?
yes, but he never gave me a gift of $100 or more. The only thing that I would say maybe went over that, but I don't think it ever did, is if we went to dinner and my meal was $100, but I don't think I've ever eaten $100 worth of food at a restaurant, because I would not pay him back if we
Girl,
went to
you could
lunch
do
or
that
went
at
to dinner.
PF Chang's.
But trips I paid him back for, I never thought about the money until y'all brought it up. And I would be less than honest. It says I was giving him the money back because I was the district attorney. I didn't take gifts from him for a lot of personal reasons.
Yet she has no proof
Anyway, I did
that
not
she
take
paid him
gifts
back.
from
No
him.
paper.
And so your reason for not disclosing any gifts from Mr. Wade on exhibit number 21 is that the aggregate amount on a net basis was less than $100 in the year 2022. Is that correct?
I did not accept a gift of him of more than $100 in 2022. The one exception to that, because I want us to be clear, is we probably went out to eat multiple times in the year. If you're considering eating a meal, because we went out multiple times, that probably went to the level of more than $100. But if we're doing tit for tat like that, I probably paid for as many meals as he paid for. And so I did not receive any gifts from him.
The question on the form,
I understand the
the
question.
aggregate in excess of $100, and your testimony is that you did not receive in the aggregate more than $100.
All right, Mr. McDougald, you can sit down now.
I don't believe she answered that question, Your Honor. She answered as to specific individual gifts.
And you're not listening to my answer either, so we're done.
Very well.
Okay, Mr. Rice.
No further questions.
Mr. Gillen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
A few questions here. I want to, you saw the book here, Find Me the Votes. That was shown to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I would like to just tender this as an exhibit, number
Is
22.
that your copy?
It is,
All right. What exhibit is that going to be?
22.
All right.
I'm making the
Is that
evidentiary contribution here to this. Now,
well? I guess
Says the-
you're tendering it. Is it with position of the state?
I'm gonna object to the relevance at this point. There's no relevance at this point.
Mr. Gillen, are you using this to
To
confront her with
impede?
prior statements?
yes, Your Honor, and
Okay.
statements that she made concerning her financial situation and laying the foundation for that, and that she gave these interviews to the authors. And so this would document that, and we ask her, get this in the record, ask her questions about it.
Well, we could mark it for impeachment purposes. I'm a little wary of entering an entire 300-page book because I don't know exactly what every single line, if it would pass hearsay or relevance or et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think it needs to be admitted as an actual evidence for the record for you to do what you need to do with it. So
Well, Your Honor, I understand. I just would,
it's marked as
again-
Exhibit 22, and we'll move from there.
thank you, Your Honor. Now, you were asked a little bit about this book before, correct?
I think Mrs. Merchant
Ms. Merchant did.
asked me some questions. Yes.
And you gave about 6 interviews to the authors of this book in the sit down?
No, sir.
You didn't? And
No.
Was it,
She answered how many interviews she gave, in her opinion.
how many, in your opinion, do you believe you gave, and how long did they last?
2 to 3, maybe 20, 30 minutes.
So your testimony is at most, you think that you gave maybe an hour to an hour and a half's interview to the authors of this book?
Oh, you mean in total?
In total, yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Anywhere between, definitely not more than 2-ish hours.
Okay. But you also were telling, when they were, the title of the book, of course, is A Hard-Charging Georgia Prosecutor, a Rogue President, and the Plot to Steal American Election. You've seen
I
that.
hadn't-
Relevant.
I-
Why is the title of the book relevant, sir?
And I had no,
And then I'm going to ask her whether or not that was the theme that they gave her when they talked with her.
Objection.
What the thing gave her? What do you mean by that?
Well, because they were sat down and they told her why they were there to interview her.
And why does that matter?
Well, I think it matters because it shows, but they want her to give her version of what her life story is. This is almost a
Sure.
life story of her. So that's why it's relevant. But if the court thinks it's not, then
No, it could be relevant to your issue of the forensic misconduct that has been alleged and maybe some of the motives at play when it comes to forensic misconduct. But I'm not seeing, again, what we're here for today was the relationship and or any financial elements of it.
correct. Well, I think it clearly relevant to the forensic misconduct, also relevant to the personal interest in terms of the finances. Let me. if
I didn't
can,
make 10
I'll-
cents off that book.
Pardon me?
I didn't make 10 cents off that book. I
Didn't
didn't,
ask whether you made any money.
okay, I just,
Didn't ask whether you made any money.
Do you have any other statements that she hadn't already been confronted
Just the
with by
facts,
Mr.
ma'am.
Well, other than, I want to focus on, when you were telling them about your financial straits and you're living kind of month to month, that is what your financial status was back in 2018 after your election.
Mr.
correct?
Gillen, we covered that at length. And you're at the end of the line. I'm sorry about that, but we've got to find new ground.
Well, and let me move on to my point here. So the point is that what you're telling us is that you were in financial straits, but really that your testimony today is you had a cash hoard of maybe up to $10,000 in cash where you laid your head at night so that you would dip out and there would be no record of it, correct?
that's not what I'm telling you, sir.
Well-
That's not at all what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is that throughout the course of my life, I have always kept cash in my house. That cash has ranged from times, my father would probably be ashamed of this because he would say it should be more. But that cash had
She said this earlier, and the reason why they're bringing up the cash issue is because she's trying to show that what they did was received a reimbursement. She's saying that he was reimbursed. He said that she reimbursed him. But the deal is there is no paper trail to show her going to the bank to withdraw the money, nor is there a paper trail that shows him receiving the money and taking it to the bank. So this unbelievable deal with people less than 70 who are now keeping large amounts of cash inside of their house and using it to repay debts or repay gifts is now what's being established. This year, the years that we're living in of the Cash App, which she said she made all of her rental payments with, we are in the age of electronic money and we're losing the whole cash piece daily. So that's why she keeps bringing this part up.
Times has ranged from $500 to maybe $9,000, and he would be like, "That is not what I told you to do."
And she's
Um,
using her father
always
as
had that
a
amount of money.
heartstring,
What I've
making
told
people
you is that
feel
when I travel, you do better
connected in that
negotiating
way.
when you travel. If you have cash, you go to get the cab. They say, "Oh, we're gonna charge you $300 for the day." Well, I got
Who
American
cares,
cash.
lady?
Will you take it for $150?
Filibustering.
And so it's my practice to take money when I
Shut
travel.
up.
We're not talking about a whole lot of money. We're going to the Bahamas. $1,500 in cash is in my pocket, or at the most $2,500. Belize was actually probably the most money I've ever taken, and it was taken because it was a big deal. My 50th birthday sucked. His 50th birthday, it sucked. It was terrible. No,
Your Honor,
And
I'd
so
like to get back to some questions here. rather
I'm
than-
let's get
trying to
back to it.
answer
rather
it.
than
I think it
narrative.
would help if we.
So let's
Get a question.
move to the specific yes or no's here. Have you told us today that you would keep a cash hoard in your residence up to about $9,000? Yes or no?
And throughout the course of my adult life. And so let's even be more specific than that. Probably from the time,
Your Honor, I'm only asking for yes or no rather
Sure.
than.
But
No, we have already covered this, so I
But yeah,
need to
but
get
I'm
to that
trying to-
point.
I'm
I know
trying
you're
to
laying the
move forward
foundation, but
other
it's already been laid. So
Yeah.
The filibuster is here. I'm trying to move through the filibuster.
yeah, but we're not talking
That's
about.
what I
And
said.
so it could be 2,000, it could be 1,500, it could be 7,500. It just depends on what you're doing at that time. What I'm telling you is when I traveled, I took cash. I find that when you travel, especially to foreign countries, the American dollar does well.
Who
and it's good to have
cares?
cash. You can negotiate with the taxi driver, with the jet skis, and it's not a lot of money we're talking about.
Your Honor.
Okay,
we
understood,
need
Ms.
to-
Willis.
we need
Let's
to
get
cut
to it.
off the
let's get to a
narrative
question, Mr. Gill.
And so you have cash in your house, but you had a lien, a tax lien on your property, is that right?
I don't believe I had a tax lien on my
You
property.
didn't have a tax lien on your property?
You gotta talk up louder, Mr. Hunt.
Cumulative, Your Honor.
Okay, we already covered that, Mr. Gillen. I need new ground here.
I'm asking the question, I'm trying to figure out how someone can have a tax
Then
lien,
ask that question.
but not use the money that they allegedly said they have.
Well, I think Ms. Merchant asked that exact same question. She said she didn't use the money to pay her tax lien. So what's your question that's new?
So I
It's the-
was gonna build on that to say.
Wow.
No more building. It's already
Just
built.
put the judge
It's
on
the
the
same
other
way you
side.
pay a bill.
So just put
It's
the
a-
top on it if you need to,
It's the
okay?
same way you owe a bill and go shopping.
Well, now, have you ever did you say earlier that you used Cash App?
When I would pay Robin Bryant, I used Cash App.
What is Cash App for the record?
I don't need to know that for the record. Let's keep going.
Well, so if you're paying Robin with Cash App, why aren't you allegedly paying Mr.?
There's no alleged here.
Why aren't you paying allegedly Mr. Wade with Cash App?
I don't think Mr. Wade does Cash App.
Did you ask him?
I think he's told me he doesn't do Cash App.
Okay, so that's the reason why you didn't use Cash App,
He's sitting next to me. I hand him the money.
because there would be a record in Cash App of your making payments, correct?
Yes,
Correct.
but I didn't think that I was making a record in a personal relationship.
Because when you're filing and I know that I'm going to move into this financial statement here. You were asked just a second ago about your
You
non-disclosure
guys hit the
form,
like
or
button
your,
and the
excuse me, your
super chat
disclosure
and cash
form
apps are
of
welcome.
an Exhibit
Thank
21,
you.
where we agree that Mr. Wade is a prohibited source, correct?
What I agree to is, I don't believe he's giving me gifts. You would like to classify these trips as gifts, but I've always paid my fair share on these trips, so I didn't not look at them as gifts. I don't think that what this is disclosing, and they can tell me if they mean something different. I don't think it means that if you go to dinner with somebody over the course of a year and it gets to 100, you're supposed to report it. If my understanding of that is wrong, I've probably been to lunches with a couple of people that over the course of a year, they paid, I paid,
let me.
Shut up.
Prohibited source means,
We already went over this, Mr. Gillen. Mr. McDougal.
well, Your Honor, I have to lay the foundation here before I can follow up with my next question.
I don't know why you can't, you have to.
Well,
It's already, the
okay,
questions have been made.
Then your 2022 disclosure form did not list any of the thousands and thousands of dollars that Mr. Wade paid for on trips that you were on.
Objection.
Isn't that correct?
That's because Mr. Wade was paid that money back, or he was paid due to the fact that I bought the plane ticket or I paid for the hotel. There were never money that he gave me. But that wasn't the nature of our relationship. You know, there's so many men, and Mr. Wade is one of them, where the nature of the relationship is they're just paying a woman. The nature of our relationship is companionship and friendship. Despite the way people would like to paint certain women, it's just not true.
Final question. And not a single solitary documentary piece of evidence showing that you have withdrawn the cash to pay him
All right.
back.
Thank you,
Isn't
Mr.
that-
Gillen.
That's not accurate.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. McCullough, on behalf of Mr. Floyd. All right, and Mr. Cromwell on behalf of Ms. Latham.
Great thing about coming last is most of your questions. I had one question, Ms. Willis. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
In the time period between February of 2021 and January of 2022, while you were staying at the Yurdi condo, did your father ever come and visit you during that time period at the Yurdi condo?
He did not.
That's all I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Cross, I would imagine you have a number of topics to cover with Ms. Willis that'll take more than 10 to 15 minutes.
I do.
Okay, then I think we've reached a stopping point for today. And so, Ms. Willis, I'd ask you to step down now. And I'd also remind you that you're not to discuss your testimony or that of any other witness until tomorrow morning. Be back here, and we'll begin again at 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
We'll do 9 a.m. this time tomorrow. Before we recess for today, I want to check in on logistics, and I'll ask Ms. Merchant. Once the testimony of Ms. Willis is concluded, how many other witnesses do you anticipate calling?
Okay, so as we can see, they're doing all the logistics and taking care of everything for tomorrow. I just want to say that
We can
they
handle-
filibustered and filibustered and filibustered, and that goes for both
You want me to
both
leave the
she
courtroom?
and
or you can sit at the
Wade.
council table. We don't change it in the witness box.
they both did that.
All right, so 2 witnesses and then
And,
other defense counsel.
What it's done is it's caused the water to be
I know,
very muddied.
Mr.
I
Gillen,
think that
there was a
Stephen,
potential witness that was objected to by the
I
state,
think
so
that,
there's another one there.
the
We
attorney
can talk about that.
Sadao
Were there any other
did a great
witnesses
job.
anticipated for
But I
the
think
defense
this
counsel?
woman here is
All
just,
right, seeing no
where
show
you
of
want
hands,
to
and then Mr.
cheer
Cross.
people on.
And
I'll
then
just
we
be
have any
honest.
Witnesses on your behalf.
You know, in my race, I want to make sure I'm cheering people on for doing a good job. I'm
Okay,
so
and
proud
how
to
many
see
witnesses
that,
do
you
you
know,
have?
there are folks out there that are making the grandkids, proud. That's pretty much what you want to do. You want to make sure that there are people out there that are, let me go ahead and cut that off because I don't want to hear anymore, but I'm going to go ahead and get ready to close out. But sometimes you just want to say, hey, you know what? You know, if you're Native American, you want to cheer people on. If you're African American, you want to cheer people on. If you're white, you want to cheer people on. You want to cheer people on that are doing good, because it's always good to see people get to specific heights and get to certain levels. But the problem with this situation is it makes you very embarrassed when you see somebody come in and behave the way that she behaved today. If you did not have the opportunity to see it, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I put a clip of it at the top of this, or I just may make it a short. That way you can see it. But it was really brazen. It was very embarrassing. And the filibustering, now that I've seen him do it and her do it, I see that it was a concerted effort, that it was an agreement that they in their minds decided to do, and they followed through with it by both of them coming in and just taking one question and stretching it out as far as they possibly could, throwing enough paint, enough mud, enough garbage on the wall, and hope that all that they put under it is ignored. And that's exactly what happened today. That's exactly what happened today. Now, if you don't mind, please go over to the Lockhart perspective. There's a very lonely video, and it's a lonely video of her alleged friend that was living in the condo prior to her living in the condo. It belonged to this woman. She's telling the story that they started to see each other, to her recollection, back in 2019 with no doubts about it. She had no qualms that that's when they started seeing one another. I believe that this case is not going to end the way most people think that it should. I think it's going to line up with everything that we've seen in the media of late as it relates to things that are just amazing. Now, you guys know I'm not on anybody's side, but you got to have enough common sense to see the difference between good and bad. And it doesn't matter who's doing it. All right. I believe that this is a hot rump mess, and I don't see it ending with anything positive for Trump. I don't. And that's, and that's pretty, that's remarkable in and of itself, because these cases, first off, this case should have been moved. I think that if it were possible, and somebody in the chat let me know if that was something that they could have done, a change of venue. I believe that it should have been, because this guy was definitely struggling today, trying to stay in the seat of a judge who should have his face completely blindfolded. A judge should have his eyes blindfolded so that he does not see who's who. And I'm not speaking naturally, I'm speaking metaphorically. A judge should never have to worry about whose face is whose. He should simply allow the questions to roll out and make sure that they're answered in the proper way, unless the person pleads the fifth, and which is their right to do. But based on what I've seen today, he has completely changed the way that he was dealing with people in the courtroom prior to FANI Willis coming out, because when FANI Willis was not there, he was making sure, to the best of his ability, that Nathan Wade and the other gentleman, as well as the woman who had, if you go over to Lockhart Perspective, you'll see that little video about her friend saying 2019 was the start date. He was pretty much on par with whomever it was, whichever attorney was up to the podium. This he did not do. He didn't do it. And I think that it's because of the fact that, hey, you're a judge in Fulton County. She's the district attorney in Fulton County. There is no way that people of like mind and people of like financial status don't know one another or haven't frequented or bumped into each other at cocktail parties, business events, local events. There's no way. So the deal is it makes it very difficult for him to be impartial or to just stick to the facts. And that's it. That's it. Just stick to the facts. Let the facts fall where they may, and keep her accountable when a question is asked. Keep Nathan Wade accountable when a question is asked. Keep everyone who comes on the podium or they're in the witness stand accountable. Now, I don't know, maybe Deborah does. What happened? Hello, Deborah. What happened to the guy from this morning who was supposed to show up? I don't remember his name. I know it was not Mr. Pumpernickel, but I think it started with a P. Nonetheless, he was a gentleman who was supposed to be there to speak and tell people that they lived together. That's who was supposed to be there this morning. The judge said this gentleman did not show up because he didn't know why. However, the other side's attorneys said, oh, well, he said that he had something to do this morning. He's not able to meet us right now. Perhaps he'll meet us later on when we're going to do it in the afternoon. Maybe he'll come over in the afternoon and meet with us. And so that's what they were supposed to do. Now, did he show up after we just got off? I don't know. But he was supposed to testify that both FANI Willis and this man literally lived together. That's what he was supposed to say. According to Ashley Merchant, he allegedly said to her that they had lived together, and that's the main reason why I was startled to see FANI Willis walk into the court today with her hand on her hip and throw the piece of paper as if to say, and she did say, she really did rip Ashley Merchant a new one in a lot of ways, because she went on to tell her, listen, I don't like what you said. You've been lying and you this and that. And that is so amazing to me. Nonetheless, I just want it to go away. Again, it is a shit show. I'm not going to take that back. I'm sorry. It's a shit show. Nothing you can say about this whole thing. It's bread and circus. Get everybody riled up enough and then just keep sneaking in jabs. 96 billion here, 60 billion over to Ukraine, 14 billion over to Israel, this, and that, and all of your money. And then they go and change the tax code on you. And now you're going to end up getting less than you would have last year. And they have given all of your money away. You and I are paying. So we've got that. We've got this story. This story is a distraction for the border. This story is a distraction for what I think is bringing in an entire army. Same way that Homeboy said he wanted to do. So it's all a mess. She should be punished. But will she? No. None of them will. None of these individuals that do things that are wrong are going to be punished. And if they are, I am a firm believer in them walking in the front door of the jail and walking right out the back and getting into a dark colored SUV with tinted windows and going on to do whatever they're going to do. Whether they go to a remote island for 4 years or the time frame that they said the person's going to be arrested, or whether they go to an undisclosed location somewhere here in the United States, deep, deep, deep underground. I don't believe that any of them are going to do anything. I don't think they're going anywhere. I just think that it's all one big show. Now, you know, whether they have SAG after cards is of no consequence. It's the fact that that's what's going on. This is a big, gigantic show. For Mr. Trump, I do hope that he and Roman are not hoping that this is going to go their way, because as you can see with the last lady that went up and said that he grabbed her Pinocha in the dressing room. She said that Trump grabbed her Pinocha in the dressing room and he went on to do X, Y, or Z. Well, I've looked at that lady, and I've also looked at the fact that she accused several people, from the dentist to a babysitter to this or that, allegedly. She's accused boatloads of folks. And in as much as she's accused those individuals for, you know, doing whatever, and then Trump for grabbing her Pinocha, they've all sort of discounted her off as being a cuckoo bird. And frankly, I'm not saying that I am in love with Trump at all. What I'm saying is I think he has better taste in women than that one. Same way when I looked at it with dear old Mr. Pudding, chocolate pudding. I was looking at some of those women and I was like, yikes. So with that said, I don't see any of this ending well. And we will be under siege by the time all of this stuff comes to fruition. I really think so, because these cats are pulling into these different places all throughout the United States pretty quickly lately. Pretty quickly. They're filling up a lot of these little locations lately. More on that when I send it out your way. Got a few videos that I'm sitting on, but I'll be putting those up soon. Go over to the Lockhart Perspective, please, and look at that little video. Go over there and look at that little video. It's going to show you the friend girl saying, yeah, they was dealing with each other since 2019. And I stopped working for her in 2022. So it's a timeline of sorts. Listen, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us for the last 2 hours and 20 minutes and 35 seconds. You guys are outstanding. Appreciate each and every one of you. Please remember to take care of yourself. Oh, take care of yourself. And then I want you to make sure that you bend around there, turn around there and take care of somebody else. And until I see you again, you make sure that you take care of my friend, please, because my friend is you. All right, you guys, take
To receive instant notification each time I upload, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification.
Helping you along the way, helping you to make it through another day.